good afternoon on what is a bright, chilly day. It is Thursday, the 25th of November. I'm back in the reading with a nice hot cup of tea and a cat who is not ours, and a pile of boxes to get through. So the first one of these is this, which is the Call of Cthulhu starter set. All you need to know to enjoy horror role-playing by Mike Mason and Friends, published by Chaosium. This was published a couple of years ago, and has been a big hit for them, because essentially it's one of the things that Call of Cthulhu has never had, is a starter set. It has had basically a quick start in various forms. The current version of the quick start includes the classic scenario of The Haunting, which graced the pages of the Call of Cthulhu rulebook for many, many years. And on the back you can see we've got a breakdown of what's in here, which is quite a lot. Good list on the back. You've got a nice shot of the cover for the Keeper's book for the current edition of Call of Cthulhu, and then an image that has graced previous editions of Call of Cthulhu, and then basically the cover for the Investigator book. So, open up what we've got inside. If I can get past the cat nosing his way through, is that. So we've got, basically the great thing is that you've got the dice, and you've got the what's in this box sheet. Now, what's great about the what's in the box sheet is that it kind of echoes back to previous boxes from Chaosium, from sort of like the 1980s, where you'd open up and you'd have that sheet saying, and previous role-playing games, we'd have what's in this box, here's an explanation if you don't know. So this one, for example, tells you, read me first, and shows you again what's in here. We've got a nice bit of an explanation of who the Chaosium is, and then underneath that we have a bit of an advert. So an advert for Cthulhu Chronicles, which is the official app for playing solo adventures for Call of Cthulhu. On there, I've reviewed one of them. And essentially, you're playing it on your tablet or your PC. It basically it allows you to play Call of Cthulhu, the solo version, solo scenarios for Call of Cthulhu, of which there are several now for you to play. So on your own. So the dice, plain and simple. I'll just show you those. Past the nosing cat. He's not interested in them, apart from getting a bit of a fuss. So what you've got here, notably, is you've got not one, not two, but three D10 den-sided dice, two of which are the tens dice, so marked 10 through 100 or 10 through 00, and that's to account for rolling for advantage, disadvantage in the game. So that's already included. Nice little touch there. And then below that we have some character sheets. Now that one is blank. I'm going to move him because he's being. Come and sit over here. Yeah, there. You sit there, next to me. He's not saying he's not taking any instructions from me. So you've got a blank one, and then beneath this, essentially, that's the one you fill out as you play through the rulebook, and you've got several of these. And then we get on to the ones which are the pre-generated ones. I'll just show you the first one of those. There we go. So you've got Jesse Williams. Okay, nice little illustration. The character, and then she is. General background, stats, sanity rating, and magic, and then her skills and so on. And then on the back, you've got basically her personal description, ideology and beliefs, significant people, meaningful locations, treasured possessions and so on, current possessions, and traits and so on. Just basically some role-playing elements which you can bring into play during the game. So essentially that ties the character to the setting and sort of like basically gives the character sort of context and background. And it does this, and we've still got several characters in here. So that is Jesse Williams. Then we've got Keiko Kane. See that with my Keiko Kane. Lois Rosso. Again, nice mix of characters there. Different occupations, so on. And this is then we have Nevada Jones. So kind of like a classic pulp sensibility name. Ideally should have been not Nevada Jones. It should have been Nevada Smith. And made it not quite so obvious. But there you go. And then Wentworth Avery. So yeah, good range of characters there. That the player, essentially, if the players don't have the time to create a character, and there is a means of character creation in here, it's one of the things that this quick start does have, which not everyone does. So below that you have Book 1, Alone Against the Flames. Now that may well be familiar to you. It's not a new scenario. Okay. It's a solo scenario, and it's been published right back. It's been out a bit longer than, almost as long as Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. And this is the introductory box set. This is the point where you really kind of start. So what this book contains has got an explanation of what's in here. So Book 1 introduces the games you play through Alone Against the Flames solo adventure. Book 2 contains the basic rules. As you play through Alone Against the Flames, you'll be asked to read certain parts of the rules. So there's a bit of program learning in this solo adventure as well. Book 3 is a collection of special starter adventures to play with your friends. Each adventure is designed to ease you into running Call of Cthulhu with plenty of advice provided. You've got role-playing dice, which I already showed you, ready-made investigators, which I showed you, and of course the blank investigator sheets as well. So you've got an overview of the game and the winners and losers. We've got a quick example of play. Nice bit of colour artwork. It's one of the fantastic things about this. It's the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu. It's finally, it's kind of been updated to give it a modern, basically full colour production, and it really benefits from it. Fantastic artwork throughout, great use of colour, and so on. And then you're into the sort of like in here. Essentially, you're into the depths of the solo adventure. Basic numbered paragraphs, as you would expect for a solo adventure. It takes you right through. Gives you plenty of choices. Gives you a few secrets along the way. Won't tell you what that is. But it's a good adventure. I mean, because it's solo adventure. It's self-contained. You're on a journey, basically to the big city. When the bus breaks down in a small village, and you are trapped, for want of a better term, and have to find out what's going on in the village, why the bus broke down, and also mechanically find out who you are and how to play the game, because it's teaching you at the same time. And in a lot of cases, what you're doing is you go along and you play, and I'll give you choices, and I'll tell you, go and read the section, the relevant section in the second book, the rule book, and then you come back to it. And basically, as you go along, you're building your character. You don't build your character and go and play. You do it step by step as you play through, and it's designed to sort of, again, to pull you, use a narrative to pull you into basically the story of the adventure, and then thinking about who your character is, pull you into the process of creating a character without going, right, this is all mechanical process, do this, this, and this. So yeah, essentially combines it with a story. Strange pieces of artwork, strange encounters with strange NPCs. Even stranger NPCs. All the way through, and essentially you've got 239, 250, and more, 270 encounters altogether in here. Now you can get this separately. You can buy Alone Against the Flame as a separate adventure, all of its very own. But this edition really is designed to teach you how to play the game and how to create a character. Doesn't quite prepare you sort of like in the question of sort of like picking up the investigator's book or the keeper's handbook and basically going through that step through process necessarily, but gives you the familiarity that you can. So yeah, once you've played through this, You got to understanding the rules, how a character operates, how the rules work, and how to create a character. Then we've got book 2, and book 2 is actually the thinnest of the rule books in the starter set, and not surprising given just essentially how short the core rules for Call of Cthulhu really are. They are merely a few pages long, and here we go. We open up. We've got an explanation of what Call of Cthulhu is and what the players do. Concepts of the game, explanation of Cthulhu mythos, mystery and investigation, and then basically got a couple of links to online resources, which includes a Call of Cthulhu review by Seth Kozgowski, which includes the game's concept and style of play, and then again Call of Cthulhu explained by Paul Fricker, who is co-author of the current version of the game. And here we have an explanation of essentially how you create a character step by step. And basically, this is the section where you are being referred to in the solo adventure Alone Against the Flames. So you basically create characteristics, and then choose an occupation and some skills. And we've got some sample occupations: antiquarian, author, dilettante, journalist, police detective, professor, author. Essentially, classic Lovecraft, what they call the classic Lovecraftian investigator roles. Skill descriptions, and again, these will be all. I mean, if you've not seen this before, you're reading these intently to see what they do. But for the most part, if you're a player of Call of Cthulhu, you'll be familiar with this. And essentially, if you're familiar at all with Call of Cthulhu, or you've looked at the core rulebook, essentially this is something that you'll be skimming through because you'll have read it before. And that's no problem at all. Essentially, we've got an explanation of how the bonus. When I say advantages and disadvantages, I mean bonus and penalty dice. It's difficult not to think of them as advantages and disadvantages dice. Then we have a section on sanity. Now, it's important to note that just how important that sanity plays a huge role in the game, as we know. It's such an important addition to not just to the game, but to the industry and hobby as well. Then we've got sample phobias and manias just down there. I mean, and the list of those is endless. And then we're bouts of madness table, how to handle combat. Because more often than not, if you're up against humans, cultists, combat will ensue. And we come down all the way down to essentially rewards of success. And I say rewards of success. The rewards are fleeting in this game, as you well know. So then we come on to, in some ways, what is the most interesting book? Book 3, Paper Chase and Other Adventures. Now, when I say Paper Chase, I'm sure that if you're a long-time fan of Call of Cthulhu, you'll go, oh, I remember that scenario. And it is, in fact, one of the oldest scenarios to appear in Call of Cthulhu. It appeared in the Call of Cthulhu Companion. And it is a short scenario designed for play between one player and one keeper. But first, what we go into, we basically go preparing for play, and it picks up, all of the 5 pre-generated characters, investigators in the box with their own character sheets, and makes them members of a society. Which is this Society for the Exploration of the Unexplained. Now, that's one of the additions to Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. It gives you an organisation to belong to, and part of the role of the organisation is to give you a sense of basically A, belonging, and B, essentially a reason to investigate. Essentially, go and investigate this because it's mysterious. Because you're a member of society, and you go and do that. It provides a bit of motivation. And the other thing it does, as members of the Society of Exploration and Unexplained, you can look to each of your other investigators and sort of and ruminate upon sort of like your shared experience. You're not you are not totally alone in encountering the mythos. You have the other members of the society. And then we get on to scenario 1, Paper Chase. This is a scenario I have run in the past. Really nice little scenario. Essentially, a nephew comes to the man comes to the investigator and says, "Oh, can you help me? Somebody appears to be stealing my late uncle's books." And the player goes and investigates. Essentially, the books keep going missing from his study, and they backtrack him to. Well, there's the clue, just there. And I think one of the problems, there are, basically, as an introductory sort of like adventure, after you've played Alone Against the Flames, it's quite different in tone. In fact, it's radically different in tone, because essentially it is keyed to the mythos. It is all tied into the Lovecraftian mythos, but it's not antagonistic. It's not essentially. It's not attempting to sacrifice the player, the investigator, or kill him, or prevent him from learning anything. In this one, it presents the mythos is sort of like as almost, well, not benign as such, but certainly sort of like a force that's going to be there anyway. So basically, a force that it's an element of the world that exists, whether the player characters are there or not. It's not necessarily passive, but it will only act if necessary. And it's a nice little involving scenario that it essentially it kind of carries you with. It does come with sort of warning, general sort of like, if you dig too far, the mythos will react, or the forces of the mythos will react. So it does come with a bit of a warning ultimately. But it's a really sort of like nicely done scenario, and here it's been greatly expanded with a lot of background, so to help the keeper run the scenario, and essentially present it to her player and his investigator. Is the next scenario, another classic, is Edge of Darkness. Here we go. And again, say another classic. This has long graced the pages of the Call of Cthulhu core rulebook. No longer is in there. There's two scenarios, the two different scenarios in there. But this was one of the classic ones. Essentially, there were 3 or 4 scenarios in there, and it was one of the ones that you played to begin with. And essentially, the player characters are hired to investigate a house and on behalf of a man who recently passed away, and discover quite what he was doing in his long past, and what he unleashed. It's a bit of a locked room, or locked room style adventure. You are stuck in this house trying to investigate a mystery, and something is preventing you from getting out. And what we have here is sort of like lengthy clues that the players can read through as their investigators, and determine quite what's going on. And we've got more and more clues, and essentially, there are. So one of the great things about Call of Cthulhu is that the different feel of it is essentially not go out, find out where you've got to go there, find out there's an enemy there and defeat it. It's a case of you do research, you really conduct research, and this is the first kind of scenario where you get lots of handouts, which are here in the bottom of the box there, that you can give to the players and as their characters, and they can really try and determine, interpret the clues from them. So yeah, lots and lots of clues in there to work out what's going on if the players and their characters take the time to conduct their research. So yeah, essentially later on they're just exploring the house, might have a situation where they encounter someone who's going to put up a fight, and we have one big bad monster here, but there are plenty outside, and that's what they're the things that are keeping the players inside the house as they try and find out what's going on, and makes it a bit of a locked house sort of mystery. So yeah, lots of more characters to keep an eye on, rather than just a couple of paper chase. But they're all clearly presented, as you would expect, essentially in the current style for Call of Cthulhu. And lastly, we come to a the biggest scenario, where essentially where Edge of Darkness. So if you start with paper chase and you're playing through with, you have one investigator, and that's one player, and the keeper. With Edge of Darkness, you can play through with one or two, probably sort of like three or so on players and their investigators. The third scenario, Deadman Stomp, is where where you need more than that. It's a bigger scenario, more involving, and where both Paper Chase and certainly to an extent Paper Chase and Edge of Darkness have sort of like a rural feel, in that ultimately their locations are kind of far away from the city. Deadman Stomp takes place in New York, and it could take place in any other big city, but it's set in New York, set at the edge of the jazz, basically right in the middle of the Jazz Age. And it, again, another scenario that has figured in the Call of Cthulhu rulebook for many years. Again, been removed. Here we go. Big clues to what's going on straight off there. It's one of the things it does deal with, or it has to come directly up and confront, is race and racism in 1920s America, and unfortunately, that's a poor, a fact of history. You don't have to include it in your rulebook or your game. So basically, what I mean is you don't have to include it in your game, but you certainly do have to address it in your rulebook or the scenario, and it's addressed there with advice on how to handle it. And that's good. That's always useful, because essentially, people do. Because to avoid offence, if anything else, and really just to put the game in context, and you definitely don't have to engage in that, and you definitely don't recommend that you do, unless you are prepared for the consequences. Anyway, so we've got sections on here about who's involved, keeper background. The scenario itself takes place around Harlem, so there's another supplement called Harlem Unbound, so you could easily fit it into a campaign set in that location, and essentially players get to go and have fun things like go to jazz clubs, and get involved in gangsters, and so on. And have terrible encounters on the street with, oh my god, there's at a funeral cortege that goes crazy. And the other thing about this campaign, the scenario, and it's again where you would play through Edge of Darkness in 2 or 3 sessions, and paper chasing maybe 1 or 2. This is probably 3 or 4, possibly even more, depending. So it's a much longer scenario, much more involved. There's much more to investigate, and its investigation has got a lot more physicality to it. There's a lot more talking to people and engaging with them, whereas paper chase tended to be a bit of research in the library and diaries and things. So you're getting quite a wide experience of the types of game that you can play in Call of Cthulhu. Most scenarios have elements of checking records and newspapers and things like that, as well as interacting with NPCs. But the mythos in essentially Deadman Stomp is much more forward in its actions. It's much more active than in the previous adventures as such, and is sort of moving to, basically it would sort of react to the players and move to act against them to a certain extent, and there is ultimately one big bad force behind it, and I'm not going to spoil it. Veteran players of Call of Cthulhu will know who I mean, but intentionally there's a high degree of manipulation here going on. So that's all the scenarios in there, and then obviously we have a sheaf of handouts, basically its own little handout booklet. So there we go. So you're getting quite a lot you're getting your money's worth. I mean, there are multiple sessions of play which you are going to get out of this box set. And that's even before you even think about picking up the core rulebook or any of the supplements. So yeah, there's a lot for you as a player to and keeper to be digging into with this set, this is available, at a very inexpensive rate. I would suggest, given just how much gaming content you are getting out of this. And one of the things I've got to say about this is that Chaosium gets its starter sets right. Some publishers bring out a starter set and you get a sheaf of player characters, another player, and then you'll get some dice, an explanation of the rules, a scenario. And then you'll get the other half of the scenario, which you can download online. That's not necessarily good value for money. This is good value for money. You open this up, you've got explanation of the rules, you've got a solo adventure you can play yourself, you've got 3 adventures you can play with your friends, okay? This will give you several good sessions worth of play. You will not be disappointed by just how much value you will get out of this and how much good gaming in here. For veteran players, it's one of the issues here that if you're a veteran player, honestly, you don't necessarily need to pick it up unless you really want to. But the likelihood is that you'll have these scenarios already in your collection in previous versions, and you can easily adapt them to Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. It's very easy. Of course, if you don't want to do that, you just want to pick this up, again, you're not necessarily going to be out of pocket, and you could easily introduce new players to the hobby and also to Call of Cthulhu. Anyway, as I say, I really like this. There's a full review of the starter set down below. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching another unboxing of the Nook. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, please click the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, please do take the time to post those, and I do respond. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a package and a book or game that I will unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, and these days a cat who is not ours, then please do hit that subscribe button. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.